Are your bars unbearable? Are your double stops a disgrace? Do bar chords make you barf? Well, don't worry, help is on the way.
Yeah? I'm Ben Eller, and you're terrible at bars, and this is why you suck at guitar. Greetings, SUCKAMANIACS, and welcome to a brand new installment of This Is Why You Suck at Guitar, here with your good pal, Uncle Ben. Bars. Bars are more than just a place that your dad goes to drink away his disappointment in you. They're a technique that's used in all styles of guitar playing, from blues and rock all the way into heavy metal, country, western, folk, whatever. If you're playing a guitar in it, you're going to be doing some bars at some point, so you might as well get good at them. Learning how to play bars, and especially bar chords, is one of the biggest stopping blocks that any guitar player will find on their path to becoming the next Francis Bubble Trousers. And I know the same held true for me too whenever I started playing guitar last year. But lucky for you, you live in the age of the allegory internet, where Uncle Ben is only a few clicks away, and I'm going to show you how you can take those bars from shit to hit in just one lesson. We're going to start from the ground up and cover everything that you need, starting off with some simple 2-string bars like you'd use in a lot of riffs and solos, and eventually working our way into some big 6-string bars like you'd use in a lot of, strummy chord shapes and stuff like that. At the end, we'll also wrap up and talk about a couple of tips and tricks that'll help you out no matter what kind of bar you're doing. So grab an axe and let's get to work on learning the techniques that you'll need to keep your dad from drinking himself to death. What do smoke on the water, cat scratch fever, and bad to the bone all have in common? Other than the fact that your parents probably 69 to them in the back of a Camaro? That's right, Jimmy, they all use bars, specifically some little 2-string bars that you can get under one fingertip really easily, if you know the right way to do it. Now, whenever I first started trying to learn how to do some simple 2-string bars like this, the impression that I was under is that you were trying to get both strings under one fingertip. So you were kind of using your normal, kind of fingertip fretting technique, like Mel Bay taught you to do, only you're trying to get 2 strings under there instead of 1. Which of course totally did not work, and my bars sounded so bad that I got a jihad put on me. I was lucky if I could get that technique to work at all, or even just get a single note out of it, much less 2. Usually whenever you do that, you'll end up having one note that's totally kind of choking out, and the other one, if it's even there, just kind of choked out and crappy sound like that too. So that was totally not the right technique to use. Eventually I started trying to get both the strings underneath kind of the pad of my finger like this rather than just trying to get them on the tip. And again, that was a really hit and miss kind of affair. Usually whenever you do that, if you keep your finger bent like that and try to get both strings under one finger, usually you'll grab whatever one the tip is on, and then the other one will just end up totally kind of muted out like that. So again, a really hit and miss kind of approach. Doesn't work very well at all. It wasn't until much later on that I discovered a simple trick that I could do with any finger on any set of strings to make little 2-string bars very easy to do. And it all revolves around this. I'm going to use this right here to demonstrate to you how it feels whenever I'm doing a bar properly, okay? So take your thumb and your index finger of your fretting hand and make just a little circle like this, a little OK sign, right? Okay, so whenever I'm playing a bar, this is exactly what it feels like. Take that knuckle right there and just mush it in. So do you see how I had a circle and then I flattened the circle out? That is exactly what it feels like whenever I'm doing a bar on the guitar. Let's say I was serenading your stepmom with a little rendition of Bad to the Bone. You notice that whenever I play those little 2-string licks on the D and G string, you'll see that my pointer finger will kind of smush in like that. That flattening out of the finger is exactly what you need in order to do a bar properly and make it sound good. If you're like a lot of guitar players, I'm sure one of the first things that you learned was whenever you play the guitar to play on the tips of the fingers, right? And that's true for most of the time. Usually whenever you're playing through pretty much anything, you don't ever want to let those fingers smush in and flatten out like that, because then they interfere with the other strings and accidentally fret them or mute them. And that's usually a bad thing. But in the case of a bar, that's exactly what you want. You want that finger to be pushing down on that other string like that. That's what makes a bar work. So what I'm getting at here is that a bar doesn't come from the fingertip at all like it does with a usual fretted note, Again, that's good technique otherwise, but when you're doing bars, it's the opposite of what you want. Let me do, as they say on Sunny in Philadelphia, and mash it here a little bit. And that way you can see where the strings are resting on my fingertip. Again, you're not going to see lines of the string on my fingertip. You're going to see them on the face of the finger. So check it out. So you got a line right there and a line right there. That's because I'm not using the tip of my finger. I'm using the front side of it like that. So let me give you another angle real quick so you can see that kind of mashing technique that I'm talking about. Again, taking that circle and flattening it out. Just kind of jackknifing your index finger like that. Making sure that knuckle is caved in and collapsed. It's not arched up like it usually is. It's kind of mashed in like that. So whenever I'm doing that bar, boom, that's exactly what it looks like. Taking this, turn it into this. And you can do that with any other finger too. So if you're doing a bar with your middle finger, it feels like that. If you're doing a bar with your ring finger, it's like that. And little finger, it's like that. But like I said, I could play through Smoke on the Water or something like that and use a couple of different fingers to do bars, and you'll see them all doing the same thing, just kind of doing that caved in knuckle, flattened out circle technique. I'll play it really slow so you can watch those fingers popping in and out. See those fingers kind of jackknifing on every one of those? That's exactly what you want to see out of your 2-string bars. Now that goes for anything, even if you're playing like some big old AC/DC style power chords. Like this E power chord I'm playing right now, it's got the open low E, the 2nd fret A, and the 2nd fret D on it. You know, again, a lot of players, like early Ben Eller, would play it like this, using 2 fingers, 1 for each string. It's totally unnecessary if you know how to do that kind of knuckle mash technique like that, and just smush it across both of those strings. Yeah, the way I've been playing these, I've really been exaggerating that kind of, again, flattened circle, jackknife finger kind of motion. But in reality, you can get away with something a little bit more subtle than that. It just takes a little bit of trial and error to find out exactly how much you need to be caving that finger in order to do it. That'll depend on a couple of things too, like how far the strings on your guitar sit away from the fretboard, what gauge strings you're using, and stuff like that. But if I was to put these into the context of a riff, like TNT by AC/DC or something like that, it has an E and an A, just using those simple 2-string bars like that and an open string above them. If I was to play that and have you watch my pointer finger, you'd notice it's not these crazy, you know, sharp angle jackknife things. I can get away with just a relatively small amount of that flattening to make those notes fret out, no problem. Now let's take those simple 2-string bars and one-up it into a big-ass 3-string thing. I remember the first time I had to use a 3-string bar as though it were only a meal ago. Well, a guitar teacher, who was this great guy named Benjamin Franklin, had me learning how to play Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. And as anybody that's ever learned that song knows, the song starts off with this A minor chord that can be a real son of a bitch if you don't know how to do bars really well. The chord is like this: 7th fret D string, 5th fret G, 5th fret B, and 5th fret on the high E string. So clearly you need to use one finger to mash down across all 3 of those, otherwise you'd end up doing that, which is retarded. So we've got to use our pointer finger to play across all 3 of the top strings on fret number 5, just like that. Now, if you're trying to do that front on, you know, again, flattened circle mash like that, it's totally doable, and you can get all 3 of those strings right under one fingertip. Again, let me give it the old Frank Reynolds mash here, and boom, you can see I've got 3 lines across my finger there where I can cover all 3 of those strings under one fingertip. Most every guitar player won't have much of a problem doing that unless you got teeny tiny little carny hands. But the problem is even if you can get that good old 3-string mash like that, it makes it really difficult to reach over there and grab that 7th fret on the D string that you need for the chord. That is without accidentally muting out some of these other strings too, because as you can see, if I got that grip going on, then my ring finger's over here, it's kind of making contact with these strings, which will mute them out and summon the ghost of John Bonham, which will destroy you. What works really well for most people in that particular scenario, and in other songs where you'll be using a 3-string bar as part of a chord, like maybe this F major 7, is to use what I think of as more of a pinch grip on that bar. Now, what I'm talking about here is instead of using the front face of the finger to put the strings on, like we did with our 2-string bars, what works really well is to actually use that outside edge of the finger a little bit. So in other words, the side of my finger that faces my thumb, okay? If you can grab the strings with that side of your finger, it provides a really great surface, for one, because it doesn't have the crease of the fingertip nearly as much. It's pretty smooth over there. It's just a good hard flat surface to put against the strings like that. And the best way to grip like that and get a lot of power out of it is to just basically think about, well, holding a guitar pick, you know, between your thumb and your pointer finger. Kind of have to pinch those two fingers together, right? Whenever I'm doing this bar, what I'm thinking about is just sort of trying to pinch the neck in between my thumb and my pointer finger. In other words, I know you can't quite see through the neck right here, but I don't have my thumb up on the neck. I don't have it off going sideways or anything like that either. I've got it directly on the other side of where my pointer finger is, just trying to imagine a good vice-like grip, squeezing those strings against the neck. Just a little support from the thumb definitely helps. And again, I'm not up here, I'm not sideways, I'm just exactly on the other side of the neck, pinching like that. Now, to get even more use out of that side surface of the finger, what helps with a lot of people is to take that elbow, right, and just kind of cock that in towards your body. A lot of players do this subconsciously whenever they play some chords, like a C chord. For example, a lot of guitar players will play, you know, like let's say an E minor like that, then when it's time to play the C, see how that elbow kind of shot in towards the body? It makes your fingers address the strings at a different angle. Like if my elbow is straight like it usually is, you can see the fingers are coming into the strings very much head on. If I cock my elbow in like I do with a C chord, see how the fingers are now kind of at a diagonal slant coming in on the strings? That's more like the kind of grip that you'll have whenever you're playing this 3-string, you know, Stairway to Heaven A minor chord. Again, you can see the fingers are kind of coming in at an angle. They're not straight on like this. It's at an angle, and it's because of the way that that elbow is cocked into my body to facilitate that kind of pinch grip that I'm doing off the side of the finger. Handy stuff. And now we're going to cover the final frontier, which is playing huge 4, 5, and 6-string bar chords, which is really tough. I know for a lot of beginners, F translates into fuck that, and B stands for bitch please. So those kinds of techniques are really tough for a lot of players. I see my students struggle with it all the time. But thankfully, I've got a couple of tricks that can help you out. Let's check them out. The day that any young suckamaniac learns his or her first bar chord is always a very traumatic day. I've seen tears. I've seen profanity. I've seen nosebleeds. I've seen kids forsake their own god and swear an allegiance to the Dark Lord. I even had this one kid whose testicles ascended back into his body. And they're really hard for me too. I remember the first time I tried to learn how to play an F major chord, and I pissed my pants and forgot who I was for half an hour. But just like most problems, it's not because they are just inherently super difficult, it's because my approach to it wasn't exactly right. These are all techniques that I use for 4, 5, and 6-string chords, but we're mainly going to focus on 6-string because that's the biggest one. But again, apply all these same tips and tricks to your 4 and 5-string chords as well. Usually whenever I see a young shred-eye-knight struggling with a difficult bar chord, like let's say an F major, I'll look over at him and see that their fretting hand looks something like this. It sounds kind of like this. Pretty miserable, right? Most of the problems that come with people's big 6-string bars like that are coming from the way that their index finger, again the bar basically, is addressing the strings. Now here's what I usually see from people that are having trouble with bars. The index finger will be kind of curved like this. And again, it's kind of hard to see through my fingers. I'll try to kind of exaggerate here so you can see what I mean. But I'll look over and see sort of a curved index finger like this. See how there's a bend in both knuckles? And that basically the fretting surface is kind of like right on top of the fret and then going away from the fret and then kind of curving back in, kind of a C shape. Yeah, that's not going to happen, man. That's not going to work. Instead, what you should be aspiring to do is to make your index finger look just like our good friend, the capo. Think for a second about the way that a capo addresses the strings. Does it lay across them in a curve looking all like your stepdad's dick? No. It's perfectly nice and straight, just like your real dad's dick. It's probably a better analogy I could have used there. But I guess the biggest point I'm trying to make here is that a good bar is nice and straight, just like a good capo, or a good dick. And also, only a real idiot would put a capo across the strings at a diagonal, so you don't want to put your bar across the strings at a diagonal either. Again, that's just not going to happen. You're not going to get a good even fret across all those strings if your finger's laying across the fret box here at an angle. Just like how you're supposed to put a capo on, nice and straight, aligned with the fret wire, that is exactly how you want your bar to be. So again, right up against the wire, good and straight, okay? Now, in order to facilitate this good straight bar that we're talking about trying to achieve right now, you got to take your hand position into consideration, okay? Here's the deal. And again, this is where most people with that curved finger shitty bar thing, this is where they're getting it from. It's from the palm being up against the neck, okay? I talk about this in a lot of my weekend wank shop videos and stuff too. But this palm up against the neck position, it's good for some things. I'm not going to say never, ever, ever do this, because it is good for some things, especially things like bending strings and stuff like that. A lot of Hendrixy kind of chord shapes use that position. But for stuff like this and very many other things where you're going to need a little bit of reach out of your fingers, this is just the last damn thing that you want to do. A lot of that is because whenever you rest your hand like this against the neck, right? Look, your fingers are too long for the strings, okay? People can say all they want about how their fingers are too small to play the guitar. That's usually total BS. Pretty much everybody's fingers are too long to play the guitar, actually. Because again, if you put your hand up against the neck like that, your fingertips end up way above it, right? So that means in order to reach the strings with the fingertips, they have to bend in half to make it anywhere. Which, look at that! There's that curved bar I was just talking about. That's exactly where it comes from. Is people being like, well, I guess I should put my pointer finger on the low E string, so they curve it in, and then boom, your bar is just totally shot after that. It's totally that curved, you know, it looks like a shrimp or something on the neck, and that's where you run into problems. So instead of playing with the palm right up against the neck like that, which is going to lead to your curved fingers and again, very little reach over here with the other guys because they're also having to bend in half to make it to the strings, here's what I advise you do. Check this out. Make your hand into a flipper. Okay, so fingers are straight, everything's straight like this. And what I want you to do is to slip that up against the neck. So again, this is that position we were in a second ago, right? Here's my thumb poking up behind the back. I got my palm on the neck. My fingers are super straight, right? Okay, so now what I want you to do is rather than get your fingertips on the strings by bending them, what I want you to do is to drop down until your pointer finger is on the E string. Boom. Now, if we look at this position, do you see how this opened up some space here? Opened up a little space for the spirit of Odin in between our palm and the underside of the neck. That's really important. Because again, now whenever you put your pointer finger on the low E string, well boom, your finger's good and straight now. We don't have that curvy thing going on. It's good and straight, just like our capo. I want to give you a good reverse cowgirl angle on this too, so you can see how the thumb is positioned on the back of the neck. A lot of times I'll show people this stuff and they'll just drop everything down. Meanwhile, the thumb is still riding high like that, which again is going to cause problems. Okay, so here's the same deal. I got my flipper hand on the neck, right? I'm going to lower my hand down. I'm going to lower everything down until the tip of my finger is on the low E string. Watch the thumb. Watch how it'll end up like halfway down the neck. Boom. So again, my thumb is not up here sticking up. It doesn't have to be down at the very bottom. I mean, I guess depending on the size of your hands, maybe it'll end up lower than mine, of course. But for me, it ends up right there around the halfway point of the neck, just to kind of support the chord and help me give a little extra squeeze on that pointer finger. So you remember whenever we were doing the 3-string bars, we kind of talked about cocking the elbow in. That way you're a little less on the front of the finger and a little bit more on the side. I find whenever I'm doing big 6-string bars, it helps me out a little bit to do the same thing. So rather than kind of playing with the front side of the finger, which has all these, you know, grooves and wrinkles in it where strings can get caught and, you know, not fret properly, a lot of times I'll kind of turn the whole apparatus sideways a little bit. That way I'm more on the flat, smooth side of the finger. So again, here's what it would look like normal. Again, I can do it, but it's tough. It's a little easier if I just cock that elbow in and get more of the side of the finger, which makes my fingers address the string at that more diagonal angle rather than front on like that. Again, adding that little diagonal like that really kind of helps out a little bit whenever you're doing some of these big bar chords. Now keep in mind, when I talk about keeping the index finger really straight, I'm really just referring to the part of the index finger that is on the board of the guitar. Anything that's not on the strings, it really doesn't matter. You'll notice most of the time whenever I play these bar chords, yeah, what's on the neck is straight, but then you'll notice a little bit of an angle like this, right? Well, this guy isn't trying to push down on any strings, so it doesn't really matter. So when I'm talking about keeping a straight index finger, I'm talking about keeping the part of your index finger that is actually on the strings straight, not necessarily the entire thing. You don't have to keep your entire pointer finger ramrod straight like that. And now for a couple of tips and tricks to help you out with whatever kind of bar it is that you're working with, whether that be a great big bar, a small bar, a beer bar, a sports bar, a gay bar, a bear bar, a twink bar, straight bar. The thumb is a really important part of making bar chords really happen because it's just basically the other side of the vise from your pointer finger. Think about the way that a vise works, you know, where it's got two surfaces that are directly in line with each other that can squeeze down on something, right? Well, that's exactly what your thumb and your pointer finger should be doing. They should be squeezing on the neck exactly parallel to each other like that. So in other words, whenever I'm doing a bar chord, my thumb isn't somewhere over here, meanwhile my pointer finger's over here. That would be like having a vise that was aligned like that. That doesn't make any sense. You want them totally aligned with each other. Here, take a look over my neck here so you can have a good look-see. So in other words, anytime I'm playing a big old bar chord, like this G bar chord like this, you can see that my pointer finger and my thumb are directly on other sides of the neck from each other. Thumb's not over here, it's not up past it, it's directly on the other side. Again, that's going to help me get that big vice-like squeeze that I need to make this chord work out in the end. And while I'm at it, let me give you another pointer about that thumb too, because I remember whenever I started playing guitar and learning bar chords, I'd sit and play through a tune or two that involved a lot of bars, and afterwards my whole hand would just be totally aching, you know? And I came to realize a lot of that was because I was over-pressurizing with that thumb on the back of the neck. A lot of times if we're having trouble getting our pointer finger to ring out well here on the front side of the neck, instead of putting the focus on this side of the neck, our mind immediately goes to the back and our thumb just starts pushing and pushing and pushing and exerting energy, and it's not even helping at all. Again, the squeeze is coming from the front side here and a little bit from the back. So if the front side is not pushed down hard enough, pushing even harder on the back isn't going to make it any better. In fact, you're usually just going to totally exhaust yourself, and worst case scenario, long term, give yourself, you know, tendonitis or arthritis or any of those terrible things that can take you out of the game. So be sure with your thumb that you're not overexerting yourself. Don't over-pressurize with that guy. Take some time and experiment and just see how little you can push down with the thumb in order to make the chord work. I mean, really, honestly, what the thumb is doing more than anything is keeping the whole guitar from moving backwards like this. If you try to do a bar chord without the thumb on at all, you'll notice the guitar will pitch back a lot, just where it's the force required for that pointer finger is pushing the guitar away from you. The thumb is just basically there to counter force. It's not actually there to add more pressure, because again, adding pressure to the back doesn't add pressure to the front. So just be sure with that thumb not to overexert that and overwork it, lest ye destroy thine hand. And while we're talking about energy saving tips here, here's another one I want to throw at you that's really, really important and totally changed the way that I play bar chords personally. This is one of the most important things you can get out of this video, actually. Bar only what is necessary, okay? Again, like I said just a second ago, whenever I started playing bar chords, my hands would just be totally shot after just a minute of playing these things, and I couldn't figure out why. And it's because I realized what I was doing is, like, again, let's use that F chord as an example, since that's a good frustrating one for a lot of people. So this chord right here, okay, it's a 6-string bar chord, right? So you hear that and you're like, okay, well, I need to bar across all 6 strings. And it's like, yeah, your pointer finger is across all of them. But take a second whenever you're working on a bar chord to ask yourself, what all notes, what all strings is my pointer finger here actually playing? Because think about it, I'm barred across all 6 strings, right? Inside of that, I've got the low E string being played by the pointer. The A string is not being played by the pointer. Neither is the D string. Neither is the G string. And then lastly here, the B string and the high E string are. So basically out of this, so-called 6-string bar chord, actually only 3 strings are actually being manipulated by the bar. Again, this guy isn't being played by the index, neither is that guy or that guy. So why even waste the time and energy to push down across those when these guys are doing the job, you know what I mean? Again, that was a lot of my problem, is I would always try to mash down across all 6 strings while also mashing down on these other strings here too, when it's totally not necessary. So most of the time whenever I'm playing like that 6-string F chord, for example, I'm very carefully managing my energy so that way I'm not wasting a ton on strings that aren't even going to be used by the pointer finger anyway. So whenever I play an F chord, here's the deal. Remember how we talked about with the 3-string bars, the kind of pinch technique where we can sort of pinch the strings between the thumb and pointer finger? Okay, I'm doing that down here at the bottom. Again, if you can see the back side of the neck, you'll see my thumb directly on the other side. It's also quite low. That's a weird angle. On the back of the neck, it's not up high, it's down low, in order to pinch the strings up against that bottom knuckle of my pointer finger. So down here, I've got the pinch going on. Just like this technique, this pinch technique, but instead of being the tip of the finger, it's kind of the knuckle of the finger, right? So that covers those two strings. The E string is actually just being covered by just the tip of the pointer finger, just by scrunching it in. Just like that. So again, you know, with this whole entire chord, I've just got the low E string. Listen, my A isn't covered at all. Neither is my D. Neither is my G. But then I've got my B string and my E string that are being played by this little pinch bar that we have down here at the bottom. Really, really, really important stuff. Only bar the strings that are necessary. Now, if I was doing a minor chord, like let's say F sharp minor, that's like 2, 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, right? And again, big 6-string bar chord. Well, in the case of that chord, I'm going to have my low E string being played by my pointer. My ring finger is playing the A. My little finger is playing the D. So again, I don't need to waste energy on trying to bar those. It doesn't matter if I'm barring behind them or not. These two guys are playing it, so it doesn't even matter. But then I've got to concentrate on G, B, and E, which are being played by this finger. So again, there comes in my little pinch bar, like we talked about with the 3-string bars, keeping the side of my finger against the strings, using my thumb directly on the other side of the neck, just to pinch those strings together against the neck. So again, if I'm playing a chord like that, I'm not barring that one, I'm not barring that one. I'm only barring what is absolutely necessary in order to conserve energy. So there you go, kids. Everything you ever wanted to know about bars, but were just too afraid to ask. Follow my advice and you're going to be covered in chicks and money in no time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more cool shit. Let me know what it is that you suck at on the guitar and I will do a lesson about it here in the near future. For those of you that are interested in taking some one-on-one Skype lessons with Uncle Ben here, I advise you to drop me an email, BenEllerGuitars@gmail.com, where we can talk about rates and times and all that stuff. And even little puppy dogs. Also be sure to follow my antics on Instagram and Twitter at BenEllerGuitars. Keep up with me, holler at me, and let me know if this lesson helped you out. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.